Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're reacting and having a discussion from a video from TwinsMainSage titled Why Are Items Significant to Killers? So that is definitely an interesting topic to get into. I really have a lot to say when it comes to a topic that's this kind of obscure or random, I guess you could say. And honestly, like I personally don't care for the killer item stuff, but obviously this is why I'm here to talk about this topic, because the best way to have a more varied opinion and to be the to have better perspectives, you got to look at the other side of the coin, right? Like I don't really have any ties to giving mercy to survivors, and I do not participate in that, which is perfectly fine. If you do so, and if you don't, is up to your own discretion. And when it comes to the items, once again, I pretty much don't really participate in that sort of gameplay either. But I'm willing to hear people kind of talk about the topic and get into it, and just let me know what you guys think in the comments.
In Dead by Daylight is a survivor dropping their item for the killer. This is a sign of peace, a sign of defeat, and it creates an opportunity for the killer to show mercy.
Interesting way to describe it, by the way. Very interesting way to describe it. A sign of sort of quitting, kind of trying to beg for mercy, and to kind of allow the killer to kind of make their decision. Now, personally, I don't really play for that. If they give up, I just take my kill and I move on. That's just how I play. And as I've mentioned before, I play mainly low tiers, so any advantage I can get my hands on, I'm going to take advantage of. Especially because I like the biggest struggle, the biggest challenge when playing a low tier killer is really trying to even get a kill in the first place, even win your games in a consistent way when you are playing against the toughest possible teams you can go up against. If you are trying to constantly win as much as you can, you are going to go against like some of the toughest players. So it's sort of within like the way I play in that kind of way, that I've just focused specifically on just winning because of that. I started off the game kind of doing that, and I've kind of stayed that way. And I've already spoken up on the topic before, on how there's sort of like a sort of double standard going on, because it seems like survivors really expect mercy in a lot of ways from a lot of killers, but then when a killer does badly, they're never ever given any mercy themselves. Like the survivors do not stop rushing off the gens, they do not stop healing, they do not give them any hooks. It's not a common thing, and that's not something that a killer can expect. But on the other hand, the survivors are entitled, and then they expect that from a killer player. So I've already spoken about that extensively before, and that's sort of my take on it. But I'm willing, obviously, to at least hear out other perspectives on it.
Tradition has always fascinated me because it's the easiest way for a survivor to show a killer that they want kindness. From the killer's side, even though we can't use items, I care a lot if a survivor offers me their medkit or toolbox or flashlight. To the point that I've allowed survivors to escape in exchange for their items, or I've allowed them to save their teammates. From a logical in-game standpoint, killers shouldn't care at all about items beyond considering how they can progress the survivor's game.
Yeah, that perspective right there that was just mentioned is something that I stick with. If I'm seeing 4 toolboxes, I'm expecting Sabo squads, or I'm expecting a gen rush, or if I'm seeing 4 flashlights, or if I'm seeing a bunch of medkits, I already know it's going to be a rough match. And mind you, like, I'm once again speaking from a perspective of maining Ghostface, like low tier killers and stuff like that. I'm not talking about playing as Blight or Wesker or Kaneki or anybody who's actually able to traverse the map. So from that perspective, I come at it from the standpoint that I need to be able to be prepared for what I'm going to be up against, because it's going to be a rough game. Which, out of the box, it's already going to be a tough game because I am playing one of the second weakest in the game.
We can't use them, and the survivor's offering shouldn't mean anything. But they do, because we like gifts, and we like trading goods and services.
Well, I would say the casual audience, yes. That's what I'll say. The casual audience would say that much, if I would say. As somebody like myself, when I've started playing, I was more focused on trying to improve at the game, get better at playing killer, and trying to, kind of be the best that I can be at who I decided to play as. And, maybe other people have had different experiences. Well, they definitely have, where they started the game and they probably were able to actually enjoy themselves and not have to really worry too much about winning as much. But at least for me personally, I didn't really have that kind of grace, and I've always been saying that even since then, that, the other side isn't really concerned with your fun in any way, shape, or form, and we shouldn't really be expecting that from the other side. And so that's why I just kind of play for, what I find fun or what I would find enjoyable, which is obviously going to be trying to be able to win the games, because obviously, like I've said, playing a low tier is rough, so getting a win in itself is already an uphill battle, and letting them get an advantage in itself is essentially relinquishing that and sort of putting down the idea that you're just gonna have to just lose this one, and it's unfortunate to see.
By giving something up, the killers aren't forced to be kind out of the goodness of their heart. Since it's transactional, it's established that the survivor's life is spared in exchange for the item to not be used for the rest of the trial. And so when a survivor...
The only thing is, I will say on the contrary with this as well, is that the survivors are completely able to have thousands upon thousands of toolboxes and flashlights and medkits and maps and other items like that, keys. So dropping one single item in the game, for some reason, as much as it really matters to survivors, for whatever reason, I mean, they have blood webs that have hundreds of these items, just from each single level that they progress, that they'll replenish their items like pretty much instantly. But they're still really concerned with the idea that they're not able to use it for one single game, and I've seen that happen with the Lightborn discussion that we've had all that time ago, and like they were really, we had a lot of people that were really adamant on hating Lightborn because it just disables flashlights, which, mind you, it's flashlights aren't going to be that useful anyway if you're busy rushing the gen out or if you're not even near people when they're on the ground. So, I think that their focus is a bit misguided. But either way, I don't believe that it's a fair exchange in that sense. Like they have plenty of these items. It's not really a sacrifice, in my opinion, especially when the mere fact that when they decide to drop their items and stuff like that, they already the damage is done. Like if it's a toolbox, they already either saboed or already rushed out the gen with it, and if it's a med kit, they most likely already healed with it. So it's not like there was a sacrifice to be had. It's not like there was anything to really be given. It's sort of like an invisible sort of handshake, but the thing is that, with one side has their fingers crossed in the back. Behind their back is essentially my perspective on it, because obviously they know full well that they're going to be able to get a free escape while also walking away with the full benefits, knowing that they're going to have their item fully available next game. And it's not like it really, at least in my opinion, matters, and that's just like my perspective on it. And I don't, and obviously as well, like it's not like killers can collect them and make them into charms or something like that, like, or you can pick them up and then that becomes like a stat that unlocks something. You know what I mean? Like if that was a thing where you could pick up survivor items and you can, you could take them as you're coming back to the campfire or whatever the heck, and you can turn it into some kind of cosmetic or something. I go, hey, that would be cool, but ultimately that is not a thing, right? So it's not like it really doesn't really matter at all, at least in my perspective.
If survivor tries to pick their item back up, I've gotten upset. More upset than I would get at a survivor teabagging or using their flashlight excessively. It feels like a violation of the agreement we made. That item was the price to pay for life. By picking it back up, the survivor has lost their immunity. A funny habit I've noticed in my...
That is an interesting idea, yeah. That's why that's all, like that interaction is also why I just don't play it for that, because just because the item's on the ground at one point doesn't mean they can't run back, grab it, and escape. You know what I mean? They still, you know, like I've said earlier, like they have their fingers crossed behind their back as they make the handshake, right? Like they already know that they're still in the full advantage no matter what the situation is. So in my opinion, it's already always going to be an unfair agreement. I would say it always leans towards them anyway. They're the only ones that truly benefit out of the interaction. But that's just how I see it, at least. But let me know what you guys think in the comments.
Killer games is when a survivor who I made this deal with later gets another item, I get greedy and the price goes up.
Later.
Now that I've seen they have more to offer, I want more. So I've had survivors collect items for me to satiate the inner loot goblin inside us all. I also know how important items can be for survivors. They're not more important than perks, but they're something that can turn the tide in a game.
I guess you could say that, right? It does turn the tide. And that's also why I say that, like, when the item is given, it's never at the beginning of the game. It's usually at the end when those advantages have already been done. If somebody's injured and they got healed from that medkit, it already gave them the advantage already. Like, they are not walking away with the disadvantage. So it's ultimately just saying, hey, I already did everything I could to get the free win, and then I'm also getting a free win because I dropped this thing on the floor. It's like from my perspective, it just doesn't give the killer anything out of it. You know what I mean? I guess for like maybe a person's, you know, satisfaction, I guess, from it, you know, which is ultimately probably what it's about. And maybe I'm overthinking it. Who knows? But, you know, at least from my perspective, I don't really engage with it. I just enjoy being the killer and using my abilities and stuff like that. And that's what I just find more enjoyable and fun, is to sort of use my ability the best that I can. And that's, you know, what I focus on. But
a last-second heal or a well-timed flashlight can change the course for a survivor team, so the sacrifice feels significant enough to warrant sparing the survivor. This active offering is also used at the end of trials when a survivor is trying to show respect to a killer or to thank them for a fun match. For this script, I actually gauged the opinions of a bunch of killer mains, and there are a lot of people that actually expect the survivors to take their item back because it benefits them more than it benefits us, as we can't use them. But on principle,
well, I guess there's different strokes for different folks, as they say, right? Because, you know, ultimately, you know, that exchange is not really interesting to me. It's not really something that I personally engage with, but I understand the idea that, you know, the more casual audiences, the more average audiences that are more focused on trying to make the game as fun as possible by, you know, obviously keeping their MMR very low or keeping their MMR to an average level and not really winning every game. Obviously, you're going to probably encounter more of these things and also try to, you know, play along with that sort of idea. And I think that's where they develop a sort of culture within that, which is a very interesting perspective, because that's not something that I personally, you know, engage with or really tried to engage with, especially when I have been focusing on trying to win a vast majority of my hours playing the game.
can't do that. I've formed emotional bonds with survivors, and those bonds broke when they took their gift back. I see it as disrespectful because once the agreement has been made, that item belongs to me. I don't care that I can't use it. I don't want anyone else to use it because it was part of a significant unspoken interaction. This item is a reminder of a connection between opponents. Communication between two sides that are fundamentally not meant to communicate is a sacred thing. This game's humanity is important to me, and it's these moments that make up what I...
That is what I find very intriguing about watching TwinsMainSage, I would say, his content, is the idea that it's so fundamentally different than what I engage with the game. So hearing another completely other side, opposite of perspective, is so fascinating for me personally, because of the idea that, like, for me, I just see a survivor injured, I want to down them and put them on a hook or something. But for them, they, like, you know, they're seeing like an interaction, another individual there that is trying to, like, make a connection of some kind and trying to, you know, create some kind of deal here, and like they're adding humanity in there as well, which is so crazy to me, because it's like, you know, we're playing as characters that are the complete opposite of that, right? We're playing as literal, like, villains of whether it be of horror movies or whether it just be out of the minds of the behavior, you know, ideas team or whatever have you, that are coming up with these diabolical, like, evil characters that have no humanity, no like everything under the sun that they could be, right? Anything that is completely immoral. And it's insane to think that, you know, despite that, like, they still want to remain true to themselves, and that idea that they're simply just like playing, you know, as themselves, using this character's abilities in a way, and trying to sort of make those connections and kind of play as casually as they do. But like, as for me, like, from my perspective, I'm really focused on trying to kind of stay true to my character that I'm playing as, and also just staying true to what I find enjoyable and fun, which is obviously focusing on trying to get as many kills as possible. And, you know, outplaying my opponent in different ways, and obviously trying to go for as many wins as I can with those characters that I enjoy playing as, like obviously like Myers or Ghostface or Chucky or whatever, like movie license that I enjoy, and I'm able to play as, you know, even Pyramid Head and stuff like that. Like I find that, you know, I like embodying those characters when I'm playing the character and playing the game, and in itself feels, you know, more enjoyable and fun to kind of step into those shoes than it is to kind of be, you know, yourself with those powers, I guess, if that makes sense, which is interesting.
I love about the trials. Committing the item to the killer in exchange for your life is what makes the interaction special. If you picked up and dropped your item every time you saw the killer, it wouldn't mean anything. At that point, the deal can no longer be made because you have shown yourself to be untrustworthy with your gifts. In cases where I have to choose between sparing two survivors, normally the one that drops their item first gets to live.
I find that pretty funny too, because I'm also a player that never spares anybody. I mean, that's just how it is. You know, obviously, given the opportunity, like if it was somebody that I maybe knew or something personally in the trial by some chance, which is very unlikely, then obviously, you know, it would be understandable. But these people are obviously just strangers, you know what I mean? They're just randoms, random people that you're just encountering. And ultimately, I don't think that, to me, it's that significant in my perspective.
It's also worth talking about when the offering is made. At the start of the game, it's way too early to declare a truce. In the middle of the game, there's too much going on to stop the killer's momentum. But at the end of the game, you've probably had a couple chases with the killer, and in a way, y'all have probably gotten to know each other.
So that concept right there is what I was referring to earlier, because I was saying that by the time the exchange even occurs, the item has already been used. 9 times out of 10, you injure somebody, they're going to use that med kit to either heal themselves or heal somebody else. Therefore, meaning that the pressure that they could have had with that item has already been exhausted, and therefore they already received the benefits that they could have gotten. And therefore means that as the killer, I already have just received the downside or received the pressure against my, you know, my efforts from that item. So them just dropping it on the floor means absolutely nothing to me personally, because the damage is already done. I already injured, and then they already got healed again. That already means I have one less person injured, therefore I have to hit them again. And that takes even more of my time. So that is my perspective on it in terms of that. Like, that is my, you know, it's so interesting to me to talk about, because it's like such a completely different way to play that I don't engage with, but to be able to hear somebody discuss that, I think is really interesting, and it's really it's a cool topic to discuss, basically, because, you know, but at least I am able to at least kind of point out the flaws, I would say, in it, in that sense, because of the fact that the items are already being used, and therefore is worthless to both sides now, because the item is essentially just empty, and obviously survivors are completely able to refill their stock with just blood points anyway. You know, whether it be they swap there to a different item and then, you know, they level up a couple of times through challenges or what other forms of blood points, there's plenty of ways. They'll just replenish it anyway. So it's insignificant for both the killer and the survivor with the empty item as well, unless they want to keep it for some reason, but they still lose the add-ons anyway. So it doesn't matter, in my opinion.
You know each other's mind games, perks, power usage, pathing. These are all ways to understand how someone's mind works. And mostly I see survivors that are backed into a corner or in a losing situation give up their item because they're asking me, as a killer, to switch from treating them as an opponent to treating them as a human. I'm a big softie, so I can't say no to that. I find it fascinating to look at all the behaviors DBD players have developed to communicate with each other, and how we've somehow created both unspoken language and currency that can be exchanged for your own or another's life. At the end of the day, there's no expectation for a killer to spare you, regardless of what you do as survivor. But I love that this is a tradition in the DBD community. It's something that is so uniquely human. The survivor bots in the future killer bots would never slow down to acknowledge the nuances of an item being given. But we slow down.
So, that is an interesting perspective. I will say that as much as I fundamentally disagree with it, it is interesting to kind of discuss it and talk about it and kind of think about that concept. And I want to kind of hand it over to you guys and say, like, what do you guys think about this type of thing? Do you engage with this sort of the item exchange culture or whatever have you? Do you like go, like, are you somebody who does this as well? What are your thoughts on the topic? Let me know in the comments. Check out the original video, which will be linked in the description. You can check out their channel, which will be linked in the description. You could, while you're there, you can look at ways to support the channel, and you can also follow on Twitch and join the Discord. So appreciate you guys for being here, man. I'll see you guys in the next one.